So the construction came in because the bottleneck I kept running into was finding a good contractor. That's why I started it, was to scale the fix and flips, and it worked. We got up to about 50 or so a year on just the fix and flips. And then as I transitioned over to new development and also existing multi, I changed the focus of the construction company as well. I've been in real estate for about 15 years full time. Real estate investor. Started with single family, kind of worked my way up to now just focusing on large multifamily, whether it's new development or existing. Started a construction company in that journey. It's been about 11 years since I started the construction company, and that was to scale the investments. It's been crucial. It's really helped me scale, and I've been able to get into a lot of syndications because of that, and my focus on the capex and being able to deliver on the business plan. As far as portfolio goes, at this point, acquired about right under 7,000 units and exited about 1,500 units.
Yeah, that's incredible. Now, why did you start the construction company? You said 11 years ago. So that was maybe before you got into multifamily, or why did you start that company?
Yeah, it was when I was still doing single family, and I was focusing a lot on fix and flips. I liked it. I liked transforming the properties and obviously adding the value and then selling them. Actually didn't like managing them. I had a rental portfolio back then, but I enjoy the large multifamily a lot better than the small single. But so the construction came in because I was trying to scale it, and the bottleneck I kept running into was finding a good contractor. We got burned a few times. I had some experience. My uncle owns a construction company. I worked with him for 2 years during college, and being an engineer, I actually, out of college with my electrical engineering degree, I went to work for UPS in what they called the engineering department, but really I was the GC for UPS. So yeah, that's why I started it, was to scale the fix and flips, and it worked. We got up to about 50 or so a year on just the fix and flips. And then as I transitioned over to new development and also existing multi, I changed the focus of the construction company as well.
Of your portfolio, what percentage is new construction, and then how much is existing? Let's start with that.
So the new construction's maybe about 10%, 5%. I keep it to 1 to 2 projects at a time. So definitely my main focus is the existing multi, and then heavy capex construction. It's probably about, at this point, and that's changed a lot in the last 12 months. We've 12 to 18 months, we've taken down more A-class type deals, which still have some capex, but very minimal. I would say maybe 70% are heavy capex projects.
Yeah, I mean, we found ourselves in a similar position that you maybe found yourself. We kind of woke up one day and we're like, crap, we're in the construction business, right? Like, we thought we're in the real estate business, and we found that we're actually in a construction business. And it was weird. It's like, man, we spend a lot of time on construction. And of course, initially, I think a lot of people do this when they get started. They will outsource a lot of the construction to either a general contractor or their property manager, or a combination of both. And then, like you experience in your house flips, it's like you got these very mixed results. You can't get really good. And so, I think as you start scaling a little bit, construction becomes more of an issue. And you recognize that in your house flips as well. But what are some of the issues that you saw early on when you didn't have your own construction company? Like, what were some of the issues you were running into as you were trying to scale?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to property management, right? Like when somebody begins to scale in multifamily, a lot of the times you see the transition to in-house property management, and it's because it's harder to put your own systems and processes into play when you're hiring a third party. Same goes with the construction. There's certain things you can put into play, especially if you're controlling the materials, that helps some, but it's also harder to find just the labor. A lot of the GCs want to do the material and the labor. So I think it was mainly to be able to scale and produce the same quality product throughout our portfolio. The way I saw that was to bring it in-house.
Yeah, George. So when you started out, you had you had to scale the construction company. I'm just curious, how did you kind of figure out who you were going to hire and what that was going to look like for you to make it work efficiently through that scaling process?
So in the beginning, I was the project manager, the everything, right? The first bottleneck that I ran into was the project management. There's only so many projects I can manage. So that was I take it back. My first was an assistant, right? But I was still the main manager. Once I grew out of that, then it was, okay, I need to find a project manager that I can train to follow the same systems and procedures that I've put in place, and run the project as well as I can, or maybe even better if they've got more experience than I do. So that was the first hire. And then it starts to trickle effect, and you've got more back office because you got more projects. So you need to start adding on there. But I will say finding a good construction project manager is probably, at least in my experience, one of the hardest positions to find.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree with you more. It's kind of like a lot of the projects you're dealing with, right? They pivot around that person, right? And so in our experience, we started out, I think, with some of the earlier projects, we were just relying on the property management company to do our construction. And it's good in a sense where they can, you might have that synergy, and if the operations and the construction are both working, that could be a good thing. However, in our first instance, we found that the operations were not doing well. And because the construction was going well, we were holding on to the bad operations for a minute, because we felt like we were tied in. So we quickly realized, we're like, well, that's probably not the best idea, actually. And so when we switched management companies, eventually we got into with the new company. They didn't have a construction arm, so we were kind of forced to build our own. And that was like, we're like, well, this is really hard, but at the same time gives us the freedom to be flexible. We don't have to rely so much on or worry about if the operations go bad, we can't make that pivot. So I think that's not a lot of syndicators. I don't think everyone has maybe the ability to do that kind of in-depth construction. I mean, there's definitely people out there, but I think it does give you a competitive advantage. And I'd like to hear about that with you. Like, what have you found as far as having that competitive advantage with that looks in business?
I mean, definitely, I agree with you 100%. A lot of the things you said, one being bringing the construction in-house allows management to worry about just management, right? The work orders and leasing and that type of stuff. And allows you to then focus on the CapEx separate.
I want to know, so what kind of a competitive advantage does it
Got it. Yes.
Yeah,
sorry.
to have your own construction.
So it's allowed us to look at these heavy lifts, which usually when you're looking at a property that needs a lot of CapEx, you're going to have less buyers. So, less competition. And then it allows us to come in with a confident offer. Not a lot of guessing, not a lot of, we think we can get it done for this. It's no, we've looked at this. My team's looked at this. We know we can get it done for this price. We can make a good offer and then hopefully land a deal.
Yeah. And part of it is you feel confident in your numbers. So if you're going into your CapEx budget and you don't know construction, or maybe it's getting bid out and it's not the right fit or whatever it is, you can go in and get the money from the lender. Or if you're just doing cash CapEx, you can go in confident knowing that your numbers are correct versus you're going in with, you know, some budget that could be made up and you get into the project and, oh no, you don't have enough money, or, you know, things aren't turning out the way they thought. And so I think, you know, that's another part of it that at least what we found is has been helpful in that arena. So George, did you also pivot into doing like fee managed deals, like third party construction, or is it just all your own stuff?
Before, when I started the construction company, it was maybe 50-50. It even started tilting a little more towards the third party. Right now that we're 100% focused on multifamily, it's probably more 70-30, 80-20. You know, most of it is in-house projects, but we do like partnering with other investors that we're looking for those long-term relationships where we can step in and then investors maybe realize that, hey, you know, giving it to the property manager probably is not the best thing, but they also don't want to take it on themselves. So we're kind of like the in-between. So yeah, really good relationships on the third party, but still we don't have to rely on the third party, which I think puts us in a nice position.
I mean, as people are starting out, they're going to rely on their property manager for construction. And it depends a little bit on the scale of the construction. Smaller property, a lot of property managers can handle that. But as they get larger and they get heavier lift, sometimes they have a construction project manager in-house. We've had that experience, and they will charge you 5-6% of the budget to oversee that. And we actually did that for a little while until we realized that we weren't really getting good results. We're like, you know what, why don't we charge a 5 or 6% development fee? And now we will bring this project manager in-house, right? And that manager now will manage everything. So it's kind of a little bit of a journey that we were on. And what you were saying, it is really hard to find a project manager. How have you gone about, and it sounds like you've been doing this for a while, so you've probably been working with at least more than one project manager. How have you been able to find that right project manager? What are you looking for there?
Yeah, I mean, I've had, I don't know, 20 plus project managers at least. You know, right now we've got four project managers on staff with some site supervisors. So, you know, that's a whole other position that kind of falls under the project manager, where if you've got a project manager managing several projects, it's nice to have some site supervisors to help them put eyes on the projects when they're not there. But you know, finding that project manager, our interview process is pretty long process. Several people in my staff, including myself, interview the project manager. We're looking, and this is almost for any position. So one is the individual. Do they have the same core values that we carry? Like, is it somebody I want to work with? I've learned throughout the years that that's number one. If I'm not getting that feeling, and you know, through the process, the interview process, it's just not lining up, then forget it. Then experience, but at the same time, you don't want them set in their ways. At least we don't, because we have different ways of managing projects, and we use a lot of software. And so, you know, sometimes a lot of experience and kind of old school way of doing things doesn't quite work for us. But so we go through a lot of questions, and our interview process is very open-ended on a lot of the questions we ask and the things we ask them to do. And it's evolved through the years, but I mean, it works for the most part. You know, before it was a lot of hiring and having to fire. Now, usually when we hire somebody and they go through that process, they're sticking around.